All right, welcome in. Hanna Time, Global Sports Broadcasting Network. What a morning to wake up to right now is the news of Franco Harris, the legendary NFL football player, passing away suddenly, shockingly, what appears to be last night. We'll get into this. We're going to stay focused on the legend Franco Harris today, and we're going to do that in 30 seconds. Cornelius, Brad, Hanna, Global Sports Broadcasting Network. This is Hanna Time in 30. All right, folks, welcome back into Hanna Time on Global Sports Broadcasting Network. Let's start off with this. This is the video of Franco immaculate reception.
Bradshaw trying to get away, and his pass is broken up by Tatum. Tipped off. Franco Harris has it, and he's over. Franco Harris grabbed the ball on a deflection. 5 seconds to go.
Franco Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers legend, passing away suddenly on a week that was being prepped and promoted for the Immaculate Reception 50 years. Raiders-Steelers play Saturday night in Pittsburgh. To reminisce, reflect on this play alone that changed the franchise forever. But last night, at the age of 72, the man who caught this ball,
out there off of Jack
Franco Harris,
and into the man of the year,
passed away.
Franco Harris's hands.
So the story is really shocking to know and hear because everything is going on with Franco and the storyline of what happened 50 years ago. It's 2 days to the date. Ironically, Friday night, NFL Network was going to do, the documentary on Franco and everything else. And then Saturday night, it was going to be Franco. Big ceremony. Raiders are in town in Pittsburgh. It's Christmas Eve night. Everything was going to reflect and reminisce about a magical moment in football history, right? Something that was caught on TV and everything about it. So Franco passes away, and we're going to go through it. We're going to channel through some of the things that he accomplished and what he meant, not, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, to a city that really having a difficult time with everything about Pittsburgh, going through its transition from the steel mills and things like that. And a football team that basically wasn't winning. And a lot of credit, or all the credit, may even go on the hands of Franco Harris, who again passed away last night. So let's throw this in real quick on Franco. And the one thing that I do remember, I did meet Franco Harris twice, but the last time was at the Super Bowl. What was it? Packers and Steelers. And very nice gentleman, very soft-spoken for a man who played angry and hard, but knew how to balance his attack with run and catch. He was also known for a guy who would step out of bounds, not take the late hit or take the hit. Franco's career was basically on course to take out Jim Brown all-time record, Walter Payton's all-time record, and just felt like a year short. And but a career that was with 4 Super Bowls, multiple AFC championships, breaking running back records, rushing records everywhere. Franco Harris is going to go down, mostly to be known as the Immaculate Reception, but it does speaks volume about his career overall. That was the Franco's army. Okay, this was Franco, Penn State guy, born in New Jersey. And gets to Pittsburgh, stays there in the Pennsylvania area, is a hero. He's basically like the local hero. He played for Penn State, Joe Paterno, the whole thing. And that catch, that photograph right behind me, snapshot of him breaking one last tackle or to get into the end zone as clock was ticking away, and Pittsburgh was on their last leg basically, and that changed our franchise. And it changed it. It made it a dynasty in a lot of ways. It made people believe, and that organization believe that things were changing, and they did greatly, as you know. Maybe the greatest dynasty run in football history with 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. And that guy, number 32, had a lot to say about it too. Pittsburgh Steelers come out with their statement about Franco itself. As you read it right there, it's difficult to find appropriate words to describe Franco Harris' impact on the Pittsburgh Steelers, his teammates, city of Pittsburgh, and the Steeler Nation from his rookie season, which included the immaculate reception through the 50 years that we are today. Franco brought joy to people on and off the field, no doubt. He never stopped giving back in so many ways. He basically touched so many lives, as the Steelers put it. And thoughts and prayers are with him, his wife Diana, and his son Doak, and the extended family at this difficult time in the Harris family. So it's shocking, folks. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers statement itself. Franco itself, when I met him, it was the day of the Super Bowl, Packers and Steelers, and just was able to just stand next to him, really, and talk to him and reminisce about his days. And, he never just was open, always willing to talk. And that's the thing that you kept hearing about Franco, about he was never about himself. He was always the great teammate, the great community guy, and he never left Pittsburgh after he was ended up in Seattle. It was just strange seeing him in Seattle for that 1 year, and then he called it quits. But Franco Harris itself, a bull of a runner, massive man, great speed for a big guy like that. He was different, and but he led the way to the Steelers dynasties of the 70s, and nice photograph of him right there. Some statements coming across the board itself. This is coming from a former teammate, Tony Dungy itself. Tony says, they were teammates. Tony Dungy was a teammate of his in the 70s. Woke up this morning to a devastating news that friend Franco Harris has passed away, one of the kindest gentlemen I have ever known. He was a great person, great teammate, Hall of Fame player, but so much more than that, a tremendous role model for me. And I would not be surprised. There's Tony Dungy on the glasses on the far right of the screen, and that's Rocky Bleier, his teammate. I'm sure Rocky's taking it hard too, but and there's Franco with the beard itself. The story between Rocky Bleier and Franco Harris is I do not recall. You can check it up, but I can promise you that Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier in the 70s in one season ran for 1,000 yards apiece. And it's the only time I remember happening, and I don't think any team in the NFL has accomplished that as running backs, okay? Running over for 1,000 yards, in a shorter season, a league that was mostly about the running game, setting up the passing game. So everybody was preparing for the run. Getting 1,000 yards was very difficult, and it was definitely a milestone. Getting it today is not a milestone. You're playing 17 games, 3 more than what Franco had to accomplish to get that mark. But still, 3 games extra means a whole lot more for people getting over 1,000 yards. But Franco was one of those. Rocky Bleier was his teammate. There was one of the great tandems running backs in NFL history. If not, you can say the best from what I just told you. Unheard of, okay, when 2 running backs gain over 1,000 yards in one season. So now you wonder why Terry Bradshaw had so much time to throw to Lynn Swann and John Stallworth when you had a running attack like that. And it gets back to basic football. You can even look back on the Steeler dynasty run back in the 70s and how it was built. And today you can still say, why can't we get back to that? The passing game is not going to be dissolved. It's obviously a high-end part of the game, but that running attack sets the tone for the whole game and for the season itself. It's a mentality and physical part of it too. And the Steelers beat you up, man. They weren't just the Steel Curtain, okay? It was Franco's army. There was a reason why they called it Franco's army. He was leading the march of that 70s run throughout the 70s, right? And, the team like the Raiders, who finally got to the Steelers in the late 70s and got their Super Bowl, maybe some revenge on the immaculate reception itself. But when Franco was on the scene, the Raiders couldn't not beat the Steelers though when Franco was on the field during playoff time. And the only game that the Steelers lost to the Raiders in the playoffs, was the Franco injury that he had against the Colts in the previous playoff game, and Rocky Bleier wasn't in the game. But Franco, he had the Raiders number, and that was tagged. That's why this weekend was going to be a big NFL calculated, set up by the NFL for these two teams to play. And now it's going to have a bigger emphasis on Franco. The Raider Nation is going to be part of it, the Steeler Nation, all of NFL. And it's kind of weird and sad when somebody passes away. But this was like they were playing this up, promoting it for 2 weeks. And it really took, first class basically this week, knowing what was coming up this weekend with the Raiders and Steelers and the celebration of the Immaculate Reception. Okay. So, and then he passes away last night. Supposedly he was on a Chris Russo talk show, and like 30 minutes later, after he got off that talk show, talking about the great catch, the great win, the Immaculate Reception, he passes away about 30 minutes right after that. So he has been touring with his wife and his son, enjoying this great recognition. And Franco will be the first one to tell you it's a team effort, everything about it. But on that day, when the Steelers were basically done, the Raiders came into Pittsburgh and were taking care of business until that last play. And Franco just happened to, if you look at the video again, I'll play it back in a little bit. But Franco was in the backfield. He was supposed to block. And for whatever reason, he went downfield and the ball was deflected back right into his hands. And plenty of video. I know Raider fans talk about it, but there's plenty of video. And one in particular with NBC's camera shot, you can see that the ball never touched the ground. He caught it right off his ankles, basically. They say shoelaces. Okay. But, Franco Harris itself, when you think about this rival this weekend, it's going to bring back a lot of what a lot of fans today do not understand how bitter and hatred between the Steelers and Raider Nation was, or these two teams in the 70s. The Raiders are supposed to be that next dynasty, right? Or the AFC dominance. And out of nowhere, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. And it all started with that Immaculate Reception. But Franco and the Raiders will always be hand in hand. And unfortunately, it's going to be like we're doing right now. It's going to be talked about for a very, very long time. More comments about what happened about the passing of Franco Harris itself. There's Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher itself. We have lost an icon in Franco Harris. Embodied Pittsburgh in his grace, humility, and sense of pride. He was a champion on the field and an ambassador off it. And thank you, Franco, for setting the standard that we'll strive to achieve as a professional and as a person. Rest in peace, and condolences to Dana, his wife. Okay. All righty. There's Bill Cowher right there. Unfortunately, they came at the wrong time with Franco itself. He made a bunch of, front cover Sports Illustrated. Franco was, he was one of those guys. I mean, Franco was a guy all over this, he was a headliner. Okay. And when you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and you talk about Franco Harris itself, I got to give you something about this. There's a nice photo of him on Sports Illustrated. Let's set this up. And the Steelers were they were the underdog going into the 70s, right? Nobody even cared. They were the bad team. They were a very bad team, right? And no titles to their name, right? So they draft Mean Joe Green. That kind of set, the beginning of what you know about. But it didn't really get going. After a few years, Terry Bradshaw was struggling, trying to figure himself out. But it was Franco Harris. That defense for Pittsburgh was growing and was really getting better and better in the early part of the 70s, right? But it was Franco's appearance and emergence to that offense as a rookie that just really balanced this whole entire team. Bradshaw was not... He just had to hand the ball off to Franco and Rocky Bleier. But here's the point I want to talk about. When fans see a Steeler Nation at football games in, A lot of fans have experienced it, and it's a big takeover. I mean, it's bigger. It's huge. Maybe the biggest takeover in any stadium, and it's hard to miss it when they have all those towels going when they come into your town. Back in the 70s, when you really set this up, and Franco set this up, they were the underdog. People fell in love. They were the blue collar team, right? Pittsburgh, steel mills, everything about it. And that day, the Raiders, okay, a lot of people did not like the Raiders, okay? And, the Raiders were always that team dancing around that Super Bowl run and, popped in a few times, but could never get through, right? But the Raiders were the bad boy. They were the better team. Everything about them, the Steelers had no chance, right? But they had home field advantage that day on this photograph behind me. And when the Steelers won that game, not just Pittsburgh jumped on this bandwagon. It was a nation that jumped on this. There were more than you can imagine. And I truly believe young boys growing up through the 70s, and I'm one of them, you were happy. You were really happy. They took out the Raiders itself. Okay. And that kind of like built this momentum. So today, you can talk to any Steeler fan in their 50s, their 60s, okay, from that era, okay, that watched this whole thing develop, that were not from Pittsburgh, but became Steeler fans. They were young boys, teenagers back then. Became Steeler fans because of this play, Franco Harris, and the momentum and the build of the Steeler Nation itself, the Steel Curtain itself began. But those fans never left. See, when you get on a bandwagon, they tend to get off, right? They tend to just like, all right, not the Steeler fans. And these new ones that showed up, that jumped on it, never got off. They never got off. And today, their parents, they got kids. I mean, they've groomed their own nation outside of Pittsburgh. That's why it began. It began with this catch. It knocked out a lot of, people did not want the Raiders. You got to understand them. People did not want the Raiders to win. And this underdog Steelers took them out. Ironically, the next game was the AFC Championship game, okay, against the Miami Dolphins, the undefeated Dolphins from 50 years ago, okay? Steelers almost beat the Dolphins. They almost knocked them out. They had them. They took a fake punt to change that game. You could be talking about, 5 Super Bowls for this dynasty in the 70s. They were there. And people fell in love with them. And the fact that they almost took out the Dolphins made them even more of a love for them. And then the following year, they get there. They beat the Vikings. And, a lot of people didn't like the Vikings. A lot of people didn't like the Cowboys, right? There was a lot of – and guess who the Steelers beat? They beat them all. And they finally finished off the Rams, who were trying to get to a Super Bowl. There were a lot. So Steeler fans who jumped on the bandwagon just kept on riding that, man, because it was a heck of a decade. And then you carried on. That's the beginning of what you see when they say the Steeler Nation. And you can talk to anybody in the 50s and 60s year olds. That's the truth. No doubt. All right. More people talking about this too. And sadly to say, Franco passing away, 72 years old. And how ironic, 72, it was 1972 when this immaculate reception happened with Franco. And, just you can't make this stuff up. You can't make it. Here's more. This is Jerome Bettis. Great running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Words can't begin to describe the pain and the feeling of Franco will always be a brother, mentor, and a definition of greatness. He was a legend on the field and personification of excellence off the field. A true class act, and to look up to and aspire to be like. Rip 32, Franco Harris itself. It's shocking, folks, because we were all expecting this big celebration weekend, or reflection weekend of Franco and the Immaculate Reception, and unfortunately passes away. And this is the photograph from Sports Illustrated from that Immaculate Reception. This is second after he catches the ball and takes up field for the winning touchdown in that playoff game. And it's a great. I like to have frame that one. That's a good picture to frame right there. Wow, that says a lot there too. It's a big one. More people talking about Franco itself as I prepare. This is Kurt Warner, former Cardinal and Ram and Giant, says, as I prepare to head to Pittsburgh for Christmas Eve game celebrating the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, I am saddened to hear of the passing of Franco Harris. I've gotten to know him over the years and at the Hall of Fame events. One of the nicest, most genuine people you'll ever meet. Rest in peace, Franco Harris. That's Kurt Warner speaking out. Also speaking out, this is the NFL Players Association. There's no doubt the representation Franco had for the NFLPA was tremendous. The guy was also on the strike lines, and in those big meeting rooms, Franco is representing the best of players and the best of our union, a quiet, steadfast, a confident leader who embodied class, everything right about union values. Franco also won the Allen Page Community Award in 1982. He'll be greatly missed. Rest in peace, Franco Harris. Yeah, you can see that photograph right there. Those images of Franco. He was part of the players itself. He represented them well and represented Pittsburgh and his teammates very well when began those negotiations between owners and players himself. So Franco Harris again passing away 50 years ago. That happened right there. Right there itself. We'll come back and play that. Somebody else speaking out here. This is John Lynch, who is the big guy executive for the 49ers right now, but also we know him as the Tampa Bay Buccaneer Super Bowl champion. One of the kindest people I've ever met. He was so much part of the NFL, my generation growing up and watching, a true legend. Exactly what I said, folks. When I had the opportunity to meet Franco, what always stood out was how good he was to everyone. God bless and rest in peace, Franco. Yeah. John Lynch said it right there. He grew up and he just couldn't help but fall in love with the Steelers because they were not supposed to. They weren't the winners. They were the major underdog. And you had all these high-profile teams. The Vikings were great. The Rams were great. The Cowboys were great. The Raiders were great. Okay, the Dolphins were great. And that's all in the 70s. But it's the Steelers that come out to be the one that just dominated the 70s in those 6 years, and maybe more if they, But that's the Steelers because of this guy Franco Harris, who passed away shortly after a radio show that he did. He was promoting or talking about 50 years ago. Franco itself, people said he was one of the hardest guys to bring down. They said Franco, because once Franco got a full head of steam, he was a big back, folks. Franco was a 6'2", 6'3", big guy, definitely could move, always kept his feet moving. But he had a little finesse to him, Franco. He had a little finesse. He would get that hand off and he would just look for that one hole. It's supposed to go left and he can cut it back. But his footwork, his feet were so quick. But he wasn't at full speed. He was looking for his hole, his space. And the Steelers' offensive line were able to give this guy enough space to dart through, to get through. And then once he got past that line of scrimmage, then you're dealing with a bowling ball with speedy legs and powerful, strong upper body, right? It was really hard to bring him down. And when Franco got into the secondary, like a lot of great backs, good luck, But he wasn't just the guy who just smashed through that hole. He looked for it, and he made the best of it. He was so, let's say, patient to look for what his opening, that little seam, and then boom, he's gone right through it. And that's, Pittsburgh always had a lot of, 3rd and 2s, right? 3rd and 2s, because Franco always got you 8 yards in 2 plays, it seemed like. And they probably went for it on 3rd and 2 with Franco again and got the first down. That's pretty much how it played out a lot. But this also helped the careers of Stallworth and Swan and Bradshaw, right? These guys who were just phenomenal names on the offense. Without Franco, they can't get that all set up. And another photo of that photo right there. There it is. One man to beat, barely stays in bounds. And we can play it back here in a little bit if you want. I know some people, but the storyline of it all, Franco Harris has passed away. And let me get this. Let me show you one more time. Okay, the video of this immaculate reception, folks. Okay, this is right here.
Last chance for the Steelers. Bradshaw trying to get away. And his pass is broken up by Tatum. Tipped off. Franco Harris has it. And he's over. Blocked. Franco Harris. Grabbed the ball on a deflection. 5 seconds to go. He grabbed it with 5 seconds to go and scored.
Let's watch this
1 million
again.
to 1 odds on this one.
Watch this. Ricochet. Ricochet out there off of Jack Tatum and into the man of the year, Franco Harris's hands.
You're watching it right there. Here's another angle that NBC had, not this one, but this next one right here. This is the angle that everybody can tell he caught the ball.
Watch this one now. Bradshaw's lucky to even get rid of the ball. He shoots it out. Jack Tatum deflects it right into the hands of Harris. And he sets off, and the big 230-pound rookie slipped away from Warren and scored.
All right, there's Franco itself. What a moment. I mean, I was like 7, 8. I don't know. I was a young boy, but I just remember everybody being excited. I lived in Brooklyn, New York, and people on my block fell in love with the Steelers. We had the Jets and the Giants, and they sucked in the 70s. Namath had that Super Bowl, but like 3 or 4 years later, it's like they were just the worst teams in football than the New York football teams. And then, here's Franco, right? And it just like, I just remember a lot of people being excited. I remember hearing, from my own older brothers, talking about this. And it was like, that captured, I would say this captured my attention to the NFL. I heard about the name and stuff, but, this was like another team to me. Like all I knew was like the Jets, and I heard, like the Giants, and that's all I knew. I was a young boy, right? We didn't have a lot of TV. We had no social media, I had to read a newspaper, but the Franco story was like, so now the eyes became towards his team, this guy, Franco's army, right? Right. Franco, I forgot what they call him, the Italian. Oh man, my mind's blank, because I think he's half black, half Italian. But anyway, Franco's army itself, awesome video right there. I have another video clip I'm going to show you, but I do want to read some stuff to you about Franco, okay? And I want you, just stay with me and bear with me on it too. I have your comments coming in. I know Jeff Brown. I saw you, Jeff, man. I really appreciate it. My apology. Jeff is a big Steeler fan. Jay Ness in the house. Appreciate it. You guys coming in. Jeff says he was a monster, bro. Yes, he was. Let's see here. Stephen Harris in the house. Joey in the house. Hey, Joey. John Tasso in the house. Angel in the house. Paula in the house. Brian, what up, man? Charles Bidwell in the house. Hey, Charles. How you doing, my friend? And Jay Ness says Franco was a beast. Yes, no doubt. I remember that game well, brother. Jeff Brown says, yes. Guys, there's a lot of reflection, man. And just keep coming with your comments, because you may remind me of something too. But I definitely want to talk about Franco and like about his career itself. Okay. Like I said, I met him once, and it was definitely a remarkable conversation, because it was, it's the first time I got to see him. I remember me, as a young boy, you grow up in New York, and like I said, but your second team was the Steelers. And if it wasn't, it was the Cowboys, Vikings, Raiders, probably Dolphins, right? For that main part of it. But the Steelers, were beating those teams. So you would just ride that out, and your friends were, how the heck are you a Cowboy fan, right? It's like, and then the Steelers would beat them, then you're like, you got them, right? That's how you were a kid. It's the Vikings, I remember the Viking fan, So when the Steelers play the Vikings in the Super Bowl, you're definitely rooting for the Steelers. You don't want the Vikings and your friends in the neighborhood who are Viking fans bragging, right? So the Steelers got them. That just kind of, the Raiders, same thing. Then the Cowboys, it just, that built up this nation from the 70s. And, winning and knocking off those teams, it just grabbed you, right? It silenced all those fans. It silenced them, and that was a big deal. It was. And I still remember that Viking Super Bowl in my friend's basement. His dad had this like big head of iceberg lettuce, just eating it like an apple, watching the game. And I remember that Super Bowl against the Vikings. That's where it all started for me, mostly for the NFL, because I became more infatuated with the Steeler team. Like, you just couldn't help it. But Franco passing away, 72 years old. Ironically, 1972 was the Immaculate Reception itself. They were going to have a big celebration for that Raider game this Saturday night, Christmas Eve in Pittsburgh. The reflection rematch game, whatever you want to say. Friday, the NFL Network had the big bio documentary on Franco. That was going to be, now it's going to be one of the most watched documentary that the NFL Network will put up there. And you're going to hear it all week long. It's shocking. And, what's Saturday night, Christmas Eve, people are going to be home, and unfortunately it's going to take something like this, but it's going to have more people watch. And it's just it should be pretty emotional. It really should be, Franco's army, the Italian army itself, Franco Harris passing away. A lot of comments, but let me read this to you so you get a more idea about Franco, okay? And we'll go from here. Franco Harris, the Hall of Famer running back who authored the Immaculate Reception, 72 years old. His son, Doak, through the AP Press, announced he passed away overnight. No cause of death was given. Like I said to you, it was basically right after a radio talk show, from what we understand, that Franco passed away. And then from there, who knows what was going on to save his life. But his death comes 2 days before the 50th anniversary of the play that provided the jolt and helped the Steelers transform themselves from also into the NFL's elite. 3 days before Pittsburgh's schedule to retire his number. They were going to retire his number on that Saturday too. They're still going to do it, but Franco's not going to be there. But the emotion in that stadium is going to be off the charts. Yes, they're playing the Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, not the Oakland Raiders, but and it'll be Christmas Eve night. The entire team at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is immensely saddened today. This is from the Hall of Fame president, Jim Porter. We have lost an incredible football player, an incredible ambassador to the Hall, and most importantly, we lost one of the finest gentlemen anyone will ever meet. The Hall of Fame and historians everywhere will tell Franco's football story forever. His life story can never be told fully, however, without including his greatness off the field. Franco ran for 12,120 yards, folks, and won 4 Super Bowl rings in 6 years in the 70s. A dynasty that began when Franco really decided, let's see. You had Terry Bradshaw and everybody else in there, but it didn't really begin until that Immaculate Reception. Pittsburgh was trailing 7-6. There's that photograph behind me, facing 4th and 10 at their own 40-yard line, and with 22 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, game was on the line, and this was known as a Hail Mary, right? So the ball gets deflected. Frenchy Fuca, who's part of that, and Jack Tatum colliding, and the ball being sent back, careening backward towards the midfield, where Franco happened just to float out there after blocking in the backfield. While nearly everyone else on the field stopped, Harris kept his legs, running, moving, snatching the ball inches above the Steelers' stadium turf, and in Oakland, near the Oakland 45-yard line. So it's just like right around midfield. And then there it is. The franchise changed forever. The play really represents the team. The Immaculate Reception was voted the greatest play in NFL history during the 100th anniversary in 2020. So you can see how the NFL is really been all over this because it's the number one play. In a lot of ways, it was one of those plays that really jolted and enhanced the NFL eyes on the NFL. You know, they had the Joe Namath story. They had the Packers, Bart Starr, and the Packers dynasty with Vince Lombardi storyline. And then it kind of floated around after the Namath stuff. You know, you had some winners in there. You had some nice teams that won. Then the Dolphins showed up, but they weren't really as sexy. And they were kind of like Dolphins, 3 straight Super Bowls, winning 2 of them in a row. And right. But this play happened during the Dolphins dynasty run. And it just kind of just ballooned the NFL in the 70s. And it was great football, great dynasty teams, great team. If it wasn't for the Steelers, somebody else would have been a dynasty because the Steelers were just in their way. You know, that's when you separate greatness and legends and all that stuff, is that it's hard to beat like the elite of all elite. Like, you know, you just don't win NBA championships unless Michael Jordan leaves and retires. You know, I mean, tell out to the New York Knicks. I'm a Knicks fan. Think about it. You know, like if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, I think Patrick Ewing would have had a couple of rings by now. Right? You can say that for a lot of greatness. And when it comes to teams, it's very hard. All these dynasty teams, there's a reason why. It was that hard to beat them. And if they weren't there, it would have been somebody else who was so good, but just couldn't knock out the team. And that was the Pittsburgh Steelers for that, basically a good part of those 70s. And like I said, 4 out of 6 years. You know, the Steelers go back-to-back Super Bowls twice. Think about that. Has that been done before? It all began with that play itself. It's hard to believe, though, 50 years. Harris said, this is his quote, "That's a long time ago," Harris said. And I have to, you know, have it so alive. You know, it's still thrilling and exciting. He says it really says a lot, and it means a lot. It does a lot. He was 6'2", 230 pounds, like I said. And, you know, it's Super Bowl IX. He had the record-breaking 158 yards rushing against the Vikings, the most valuable player of that Super Bowl. He has 354 yards rushing on the NFL's biggest stage, the Super Bowl, a record nearly 4 decades after his retirement. Think about that one. 354 career rushing yards on the NFL's biggest stage, the Super Bowl, remains a record nearly 4 decades after his retirement. Okay, this is, you know, people don't realize, they know when you talk about great running backs and you talk about the line of, you know, in recent history, Franco is just been put to the back. And, you know, and it's almost because Franco he's not a loudmouth. He's quiet. He's reserved, right? I mean, it probably didn't help his cause. You know, he was going to break, you know, Walter Payton and surpass Jim Brown. Like, all that stuff was happening towards the end of his career. He was on his way. You know, like I said, the 12,000 plus yards are, you know, decided a lot. So I think talking more about Franco itself, I'm going to scroll down more content information for you here. So he was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey, okay, March 7th, 1950. Went to Penn State, okay, where his primary job was to block and open holes for the great running back Lydell Mitchell, okay. The Steelers in the final stages of rebuilding by Hall of Fame coach Chuck Noll saw enough in Harris to make him the 13th pick overall in 1972. Yeah, 50 years ago. Franco dies at 72 years old. When the Noll drafted Franco, he gave the offense, he gave him the heart and soul, basically. He gave discipline because he had to be disciplined to block and open up holes. He gave it desire because Franco never gave up. Franco was the bull, okay? He carried that team. That's why it's Franco's Army. He gave it the ability to win the championship in Pittsburgh, and that's Lynn Swann saying that, okay? Who are frequent roommates, not frequent. I think it's a freaking roommates. Why not? Harris' impact was immediate, though, in the NFL. Like I said, 1972 as a rookie, he a rookie record at the time, 1,055 yards, 10 touchdowns. A rookie. Come on, think about this. When the league was known to stop the run, and it was about the running game. Run first, pass second, right? The Italian-American population embraced Harris, though, led by 2 local businessmen who founded what became known as Franco's Italian Army, a nod to Harris' roots and son of an African American father and an Italian mother. Okay, there you have it. That's why I'm trying to say to you earlier. The immaculate reception made by Harris, a star though, and it didn't stop from there though. Typically preferred to let his play, not his mouth, do the talking. This was probably why Franco didn't really get enough love in his post-retirement, other than the greatest play and the immaculate reception. But his career was beyond legendary. It was there with the Walter Paytons, the Emmitt Smith, the Jim Browns, right? The Eric Dickersons. This Franco was that guy on a team that featured personalities in Bradshaw and Joe Green and Jack Lambert. Intensely quiet Harris spent 12 seasons as the engine, though, that helped Pittsburgh's offense go. And that was the key. People didn't realize that Franco stabilized that offense. He really did. He stabilized it and allowed Bradshaw to develop into a better quarterback and, ironically, a throwing quarterback in the late 70s when the Steelers won another 2 Super Bowls in that dynasty run itself. So, what an era itself. Harris said this during his Hall of Fame speech. Each player had their strengths and weaknesses, each their own thinking, each their own method, just each had their own. He's talking about his teammates. But then it was amazing. It all came together, and it stayed together to forge the greatest team of all times. No doubt. No doubt. Harris made it to a habit, though, to stick up for his teammates. There was he was a ultimate teammate. Bradshaw took what Harris felt was an illegal hit from the Dallas Cowboys. Remember this one? Hollywood Henderson in Super Bowl 78, right? This was probably the most hyped up Super Bowl ever. The Steelers, Cowboys, second Super Bowl. I'm sorry. The first one was a doozy. It was a great one. But the second one was the clashing of 2 mega dynasty or great teams. The Cowboys and the Steelers were going to get it on for the second time. 5 years? Okay, second time in 5 years in the Super Bowl. And Hollywood Henderson was talking all that smack about Bradshaw and everything else. The game got going. It was a great game. Started off fantastic, explosive, both teams scoring and things. But there was a play. Bradshaw got picked on by Thomas Hollywood Henderson, who was picking on Bradshaw all week, saying that he couldn't spell the word cat if they gave him the letters C and T. All right. But it was Franco Harris who did basically took into his own hands when there was a late hit on Bradshaw in Super Bowl 78. Look it up. I wish I had the video for you. And Hollywood Henderson, with all that smack and hype that he was bringing to that Super Bowl in Miami that day, leading up to that game, it was Franco who got up in his face, pointing his finger, pissed off, protecting his quarterback. The very next play, Bradshaw hands the ball off to Franco, and he just steams 22 yards to the end zone. Basically, one of the hardest running. You can tell Franco was pissed, and all that adrenaline that he had, with the Henderson problem. And this happened, they gave the Steelers 11-point lead at that point in that Super Bowl, which they did not relinquish. Matter of fact, on the following kickoff, following that touchdown, there was a fumble. Steelers got it. Next play later, boom, Lynn Swann, touchdown Steelers, and the romp was on until the Cowboys made a comeback that day. But the Steelers won the Super Bowl. Despite all the success in his Pittsburgh, and it ended kind of odd, when Steelers cut him and held out because he was – and the Steelers back then didn't want to pay. They were in a different place. So they cut Franco Harris, and this was not uncommon for Steelers to let go some of their great ones who they leaned on. So right before the 1984 season, and, famously answered Franco who. This is sadly to hear that. But when asked about Franco Harris, Chuck Noll just kind of bypassed it and said Franco who, which is kind of weird in a way. Chuck had a way, Chuck Noll, to just move on to the next guy, and that's that grind. But he knows darn well Franco was his man, and that kind of rubbed people wrong a little bit too. Harris signed with the Seattle Seahawks, and he only rushed for 170 yards in 8 games before being released in mid-season. It was done. And Steelers didn't bring him back. He was retired as the NFL's third all-time leading rusher behind Walter Payton and Jim Brown. Okay, so that's why he's such legendary stuff there. I don't even think about that anymore, Harris says. And back in 2006, I'm still black and gold. Doesn't go back, doesn't think about the Seattle time, getting cut by the Steelers, the comment that was made. Harris remained in Pittsburgh following his retirement, opening up a bakery and becoming heavily involved in several, charities, including serving as the chairman of the Pittsburgh Promise, which provides college scholarships and opportunities for the Pittsburgh public school students itself. Like I said, born in Fort Dix, New Jersey, a Jersey boy, gone to Penn State. A lot of Penn State players came from New Jersey, by the way. Franco was one of them. A lot of great talent comes out of Jersey. A lot of great stuff. It makes you wonder why Rutgers can't just really become dominant itself. But there you go, Franco Harris itself, the sadness of it all. I just wanted to stick to this today on my show. There was not going to go into anything else. I wanted to really do a dedication show for a athlete that not only just made an impression on me, but it made an impression on the nation itself. And it all goes back to that play that's right behind me, right there. So before I sign off today, I want to play this one video of Franco. Kind of sums up. It's just from the NFL films. I'll give them credit for this, but this is the Franco story here.
As one of the greatest running backs in NFL history, Franco Harris began his pro football career as the Pittsburgh Steelers' #1 pick in the 1972 NFL Draft. A mainstay in the Steelers' backfield, Franco led Pittsburgh to 8 division championships, 4 conference titles, and 4 Super Bowl victories.
That's the run right there when he got pissed at Hollywood. That's the Hollywood run right there. There it is. So I did have it.
The 6'2", 230-pound Hall of Fame back was a versatile big yardage runner and a key component in the powerful Pittsburgh offensive machine that mowed down and maligned would-be defenders at will.
Harris came along at a time when big backs and ball control were in, and establishing a ground game was standard procedure for success.
Harris had all the tangibles of lore. A complete back, replete with both vision and short area burst, cementing himself as a superstar after rushing for more
he's
than
a big
1,000
back.
yards in 8 seasons.
Look, I mean, he's a big guy.
By the legendary Jim Brown.
So there you have it. Franco, you saw the video of him too. He's a big guy who was able to be as smooth as any smaller, running back that you would watch today. Franco was one of the big guys. I mean, you don't really see. I mean, now today they're bigger because the athlete's different. But back then, you didn't get a 6'2", 6'3" running back who can be a finesse runner, who can be a power runner, who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Franco had great hands, and that was another element that the Steelers added when Terry Bradshaw and they opened up more of the offense. Franco was part of that. So Franco was beyond just a runner. Great hands, just great blocker. I mean, you got to realize he was a great blocker. He was a fullback, right? Basically. But he had the ability to do everything that any great running back that you love watching over the last, 4 or 5 decades, right? Franco was 50 years ago when he was a rookie. Unfortunately, Franco was done, passing away sometime throughout the night, or it was announced and you woke up to the news. Let me see here. Let's go with Joel. Hey, Joel. Crazy to cut him, but it was a different time. It was. and the Steelers did that. Hey, John Gale. How you doing, buddy? Joel, I'm going to go stay on you, Joe. What else did you say here? Hard to believe the Steelers waited so long to honor this guy. It really is. Like 50 years ago, he became a Steeler. He retired 84-ish when he was with Seattle when they released him. So we're talking, 40, 38 years, after his career is over. He was the guy. He has the greatest play in Super Bowl history and the NFL history and the greatest play that we still talk about today. And the Steelers were basically riding his back. I mean, that's why it's Franco's Italian army. I mean, they literally rode his back. But like Joel said, why did it take so long Franco. And now you don't even get a chance to see him Saturday night when they do the honors of retiring his number. Okay. This is going to be a great night. I know a lot of you are going to be watching it, not because of what I'm talking about. It's all over the place. And you got to realize the Pittsburgh Steelers were a big part of the growth of the big boom of the NFL. Because you had to have greatness. You had to have heroes. You had to have underdogs. You had to have rivals, right, to go up again. I mean, all this. And it was the Steelers that generated all that to those teams that you didn't want to win. But the NFL was, the Joe Namath put the NFL on the map, as the people want to say it, but it faded. It actually faded, unfortunately. All right. So, guys, we're going to go out here right now. We're going to start here and take it, guys, and see you